Hey everybody, it's Jordan here from SwitchWatch, back again with another review, this time of Soul Divide on the Nintendo Switch. Thanks to ZeroDiv for providing this review code so I can tell you guys if it's worth your hard-earned cash or not. Let's get on with it. If there's one thing I'm never too far away from in life, it's a review of a classic retro shooter. Not that I'm complaining, this is basically my paradise. This is yet another Psikyo shooter and one of their more quirky efforts, Soul Divide. The story of Soul Divide has had much more effort put into it than what I'm used to with Psikyo shooters. For a start, you can actually follow what's going on, even if exposition and cutscenes are only a couple of seconds long. Each of the three characters have their own little entry into the story as they hunt down Ifthur to stop his dastardly plans. It's not really relevant, but it's nice that they actually tried somewhat, and I liked the fact that each of the characters had their different motivations for going after him. The audio is really good. This time there's an epic soundtrack behind the scenes with lots of trumpets and cymbal crashes. Sadly, since each track is so short like the levels themselves, I find it difficult to say that no particular tracks are memorable, which is a shame. There's nothing that really stands out and catches the ears, even if it suits the game very well overall. Visually, the game stands out very uniquely compared to what I'm used to with these kind of games. There's almost a digitized sprite look to the game, similar to Mortal Kombat and Donkey Kong Country back in the day, and while I can't say it's particularly aged well, I can appreciate the effort they went into to create something different. I think one complaint I generally have about Psikyo games up to this point was that they often played it safe with their graphics. They look great and they didn't want to change that, so they very often felt indistinguishable from each other. Soul Divide has no problem with that. With its medieval fantasy look, Soul Divide is an odd one. I suppose back in the day it would have looked pretty cool, although nowadays it's dated and a little comical. In that regard, it does have a cheesy charm to it which I like. As a side-scrolling shooter, it's a little different from their usual vertical efforts. Indeed, the mechanics are much deeper than what you may be used to if you picked up their other games on the Switch so far. There are three different characters to choose from: Kashon, Vorg and Tiora. Some quality fantasy names there. They each have their own attacks of course, although I'm not sure about their properties. One thing you'll instantly notice about the game is just how huge the characters are. Not only that, but their hitboxes aren't so clearly defined, making precision movements more difficult than they need to be. Soul Divide is a much more ambitious game than most of Psikyo's efforts, as it has three different attacks, all of which have to be used tactically. As a shooter, you of course have your standard shooting attack, which is thankfully on auto fire on the Switch. Then you have your melee attack, defaultly mapped to the B button. This is a powerful attack that can be comboed with successful uses, and can render enemies incapable of action. Of course, there is a lot of risk. First, you have to get close to the enemy, and it leaves you vulnerable to the other surrounding foes. Another note is that certain enemies will come to meet you to take you on in a melee battle. Not content to shoot you from afar, one from the crowd will move inches from you, swinging their weapons and following your every move. It gets super claustrophobic and is quite difficult to avoid them. No less so thanks to the half a dozen other enemies on the screen shooting you from a distance. And this brings me to one of the main problems with Soul Divide as a shooter. It's a little too chaotic and unpredictable. This seems to be a little more random compared to your average classic retro shmup. There's little room for maneuvering, and it's pot luck as to how nice the enemies are to you. Besides the melee attack, the main interest is in its magic system. As you destroy enemies, you'll be able to pick up scrolls that contain new spells to learn, whether it be a freezing spell, an all-encompassing thunder attack, or to stop time. There are a surprising amount available in the game. Your character has a magic meter, and you can scroll through your available spells with the shoulder buttons and unleash them upon your enemies with the X button. It adds a whole dimension to the gameplay in terms of how you want to tactically use them against a handful of bosses in the game. It's all really cool, but you end up heavily relying on item drops a bit too much, whether for that one spell you really like for that one boss, or potions to refill your magic meter. So while that's nice for casual play, hardcore shmup addicts may not enjoy that aspect. The gameplay as a whole feels less masterable, as though there's no scientific formula behind it to be cracked. It's a bit random and chaotic, at least from what I've gathered in my short playtime. The way enemies close in on you and leaving you very claustrophobic, while also getting shot from afar, feels like a step too far in my opinion. I like it, don't get me wrong, but it's less satisfying than what I've played before. It's a difficult game, no doubt. Indeed, on the 4 difficulty settings, with none of the options changed in the menus, I struggled to complete it on the easy setting thanks to the meager 2 continues provided. Obviously you can crank up the amount of continues, which seems like cheating, but honestly that does help you learn the game more in my opinion, and sometimes when you just want a quick blast through the action, it's very welcome. When talking about value, it all depends on how much you're going to replay this shooter. With 3 characters to choose from and 4 very noticeable difficulties, you will probably get your money's worth out of this one if you're a shooter fan. I would say that hardcore shooter fans who enjoy mastering the games will probably find this less valuable since, as I said previously, it doesn't seem to be the kind of game that you commit to studying and learning due to its chaotic nature. I will replay this once in a while, but it will be a little way down the list compared to other Psikyo games. Overall, Soul Divide is a decent game, no doubt. I just found it a little less satisfactory to play than most of Psikyo's previous efforts. It has everything going for it though, considering it's probably their most mechanically deep game that I've played. Great magic system, melee attacks, shooting attacks, and even attempt at storytelling. But there's something about the setup that just doesn't give me instant gratification like I get with Gunbird, for example. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed playing it and will continue to do so, but I think shmup fans will rank this one a bit lower despite its ambition. I would give Soul Divide a 7 out of 10. Okay guys, you know what to do. If you're a regular Switch watcher, then click that like button and leave a comment below. What do you think of Soul Divide? Where does it rank amongst the other Psikyo shooters? If you're new here, then we would love you to consider subscribing for more awesome Switch content in the future. And finally, head over to the website switchwatch.co.uk for news, reviews and features. It's well worth a daily look, I promise. I've been Jordan from Switchwatch and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.